Tell Us About Yourself is sponsored by bonusround.ca, streaming Canada's classic game shows on demand. Dive into the golden age of television with thousands of episodes of Canadian series that defined an era from anywhere in the world, all for just $1.99 a month. From iconic shows like Let's Make a Deal and Definition to cult classics like Bumper Stumpers and The Mad Dash, bonusround.ca brings you timeless entertainment that's fun, enlightening, and affordable. For less than the price of a cup of coffee, relive the magic of Canadian television history. Subscribe now at bonusround.ca for $1.99 and turn every night into game show night. And by The Inn at Leola Village. Nestled in the heart of picturesque Pennsylvania, the Inn at Leola Village is a sanctuary of luxury and relaxation. Indulge in the timeless beauty of their historic suites, each meticulously designed to transport you to a bygone era of elegance and grace. Experience the culinary delights of their award-winning Italian restaurant, where every dish is a masterpiece crafted from the finest local ingredients. From romantic getaways to corporate retreats, the Inn at Leola Village offers a haven for every occasion. Unwind at the spa, stroll through the lush gardens, and let the stress of everyday life melt away. Make your reservation today at theinnatleolavillage.com or call the front desk at area code 717-656-7002. The Inn at Leola Village, an oasis of luxury. Tell Us About Yourself, Conversations with Game Show Contestants is produced in partnership with the Strong National Museum of Play in Rochester, New York, one of the largest history museums in the United States, and one of the leading museums serving families with highly interactive exhibits and programs. Since 1968, the Strong Museum has been dedicated to exploring the ways in which play encourages learning, creativity, and discovery, and how it illuminates cultural history. And their National Archives of Game Show History. Founded by industry veterans Bob Bowden and Howard Blumenthal, the archive is home to thousands of artifacts representing over 80 years of broadcasting, including props, set designs, video interviews with game show professionals, and other iconic elements from the history of television at play. For more information about the National Archives of Game Show History or the Strong National Museum of Play, visit museumofplay.org or call area code 585-263-2700.
Blue 35.
Tell us about yourself, would you?
Tell us something about you.
For any new viewers, won't you tell us again about yourself?
We've met before, but let's meet again. Tell us about yourself.
What else can you tell us about yourself?
Perhaps you'd fill us in again and tell us about yourself.
I'm Christian Carrion. Let's talk about hamburgers. In South Africa's Bunny Chow burger, a patty often made from beef or lamb is seasoned with South African spices, topped with a flavorful curry sauce, chutney, and various condiments, and served in a hollowed-out half loaf of bread. In Italy, a pizzaiola burger is seasoned with Italian herbs and spices, topped with rich tomato sauce, melted mozzarella cheese, and sometimes additional pizza-inspired toppings, and served on a bun. Malaysia's Ramly burger, named after the Ramly fast food brand that popularized it, is often wrapped in an egg omelet and then generously slathered with various sauces such as chili, mayonnaise, and a sweet tangy sauce, along with lettuce, onions, and cheese. Dozens of countries around the world boast their own renditions of the hamburger, dozens of uniquely national takes on an American icon. In the same way, the American art form of the TV game show has been adapted overseas with varied ranges of native flavors. Jeopardy in Saudi Arabia contained a traditional dance segment before the Triple Jeopardy round. A version of Hollywood Squares in 1980s Sweden featured live music provided throughout the show by an onstage pianist. In the late 1970s, The Chance, a Japanese interpretation of The Price is Right, was hosted by Pink Lady, a Japanese female pop duo. My guest tonight participated in Test of Korean for International Communication, a one-time special airing on the occasion of Lunar New Year in South Korea in 2002. And in the show, like a hamburger, she was subjected to an intense grilling. Sorry. Sarah, welcome to the show. Tell us about yourself.
My name is Sarah Brebner. I'm based in Toronto. I primarily do sound and film and TV. And sorry, what was the other part of the question?
Oh, sorry. Your name, where you're from, and what you do for a living. I think.
Oh, well, there we go.
Yeah, that's it. Oh, perfect. We got it.
Sweet.
Sure.
Off to a good start.
Absolutely. So, Sarah, tell me about the role, if any, that game shows played in your life growing up before you got a chance to be on one. Were you a fan of game shows at all?
Yeah, well, it's funny. I mean, I enjoyed watching game shows, but I never, it's not something I would necessarily, watch religiously. Like I wouldn't, look out for, when game shows were scheduled, but I certainly always enjoyed watching them. And so it was definitely kind of out of left field, I guess you could say, for me to have appeared as a contestant on a show, on a game show. That was a very unique experience for me.
Sure. And, I've talked to many, many, many contestants on this show. And I like to think at this point in my journey as somebody who loves this kind of thing, if you name a show, I can talk about it until you don't need me to talk about it anymore. I have never heard of this show. I didn't know this show existed. So it's a joy for me to be in complete learning mode while you tell me about this experience, because I didn't even know South Korea had game shows, to be honest with you.
Oh, yeah. Amazing. Yeah. Well, I would love to kind of delve into that a little bit. So, so how I ended up being on the show was also kind of a little bit of a journey, I guess, as it were. So again, I was living in Seoul at the time. I was teaching English, and at the school that I worked at, we would have weekly meetings, and at one of the weekly meetings, the head teacher at the school I was teaching at said, "Hey, KBS, that's the national broadcaster, major broadcaster in South Korea, that they were having this one-off show, and that they were looking for contestants. And so they were looking for contestants from all around the world. And the only kind of requirement is that you had to have at least an intermediate level or higher of Korean. And they also had they were going to have a small talent section as well, apparently.
Right.
So
now, are you of Korean heritage?
No, I'm not. No, not at all.
Okay.
No, and actually, and the funny part is actually at the time I really could not speak much Korean at all. I could speak a little bit. I mean, I learned how to read and write Hangul, which is like the written Korean alphabet, because it's all phonetic. But in terms of my vocabulary, it was very limited because I was very much a beginner.
Understood. And you were learning Korean for professional reasons or just for sort of self-improvement?
I would say for self-improvement, really, because I mean, in my day-to-day work, I mean, I was speaking English all the time, and even when I was out and about, people would generally want to practice their English with me. So it was so quite often, even when I wasn't at work, I was speaking English quite a bit. So it was more for me, because I've always loved languages. So that's, I just really wanted to learn it. So that's why I kind of taught myself how to how to read and write it at least, and learning some basic Korean anyway. But so when I heard about this show, myself and some of my friends who also taught at the same school, we thought, okay, none of us could speak very good Korean, but we thought, okay, maybe we can get on the show for the talent section. So at the time we thought, okay, we'd put together like a little musical number. And I don't remember what the song was at this point, but I was going to play the violin, and some of the other guys were going to, they were going to play like, I don't know, guitar, and one guy was going to sing. And so we practiced, we rehearsed, and, we thought, okay, we maybe have a good, decent chance. We went downtown to the KBS building, to put in our application, and we met with I don't know if he was a producer, but some member of the team. And as soon as they met us, as soon as this, as soon as he kind of heard us open our mouths to try to say anything in Korean, I mean, it became immediately obvious that none of us could really speak very much Korean. And I think they were pretty much about to say, well, thanks for coming down to the studio, but, don't know if we can have you on the show. And I don't know, to this day, I think maybe they just took pity on us, like maybe because we looked so disappointed. I don't know. But they were like, okay, well, here, you can at least fill out the application form. So they had us sit down and fill out this application form. And one of the fields in this form was hobbies. And one of my friends said, yeah, well, Sarah, you dance, right? You should put that down. I don't really I don't dance. So first of all, let me just say that I don't dance. I'm not,
Okay, you're right.
But back in when I was doing my undergrad, I took some belly dance classes just for fun and fitness, I guess. And so this friend of mine, he knew that I had at least some very basic ability to belly dance, and it was just anyway. So
belly dancing in Korean, you seem like a very adventurous person. It seems like you really like to learn.
Yeah, it definitely took a certain fearlessness, that's for sure. I don't know if I would do it now, but at the time, yeah.
Sure.
So it even took me a moment to even clue into what he was talking about, because that was not on my radar at all. I wasn't even thinking about that. And then when I realized what he was kind of joking at, and I was like, oh my God, I can't imagine, I'm not going to do that on national television. No. But then the producer who was sitting with all of us, he was like, oh, well, what kind of dance? And I was like, oh, belly dance. And he was like, oh, I want to see that. And so I was like, oh,
right.
Well. I was like,
okay. You know what? I think we had a spot open up.
Exactly, right?
That's so funny. That's funny. So you mentioned there's a talent portion. What was this show? Explain to me the name, and explain to me just a little bit about how it worked.
Sure. Yeah. So the show is called Tokic, spelled TOKIC, and it was basically a riff on TOEIC. What is it? EIEC. I'd have to write that down. At the time, anyway, that was a very common test that a lot of students would take in Korea, called Test of English for International Communication. And so Tokic was kind of like a riff on that. So basically, it was like a one-off comedic kind of quiz show. And all of the contestants were from many countries around the world. And the one thing that everyone had in common was the Korean language. So a lot of the contestants some of them were studying Korean, they were studying the language in Korea. Some of the contestants were married to Koreans, so they were living in the country and they spoke Korean as well. And so Korean was kind of like the common language in this show. And it was, so basically the format of it was all multiple choice. And it was basically there were three co-hosts, and they would read out the question, and apparently the questions were funny. I mean, I had no idea what was going on. I didn't speak the language, but
Sure.
everyone else would laugh. So like, okay, I'll laugh too. I guess it's funny.
I'm pretty sure this was a Saturday Night Live sketch, if I'm not mistaken.
Could be. And had a little live studio audience too. And so that one of the three co-hosts would read out the question, and it would be like a multiple choice. And after reading out the possible answers, there would be a little sound cue like doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. And so when I'd hear that, I'd know, oh, okay, it's time for me to enter my answer. And we all of us contestants, we all had a little box in front of us with little numbers, so we could just punch in whatever number we thought was the correct answer. But everyone else was using their skills and their knowledge, and I was just randomly pressing numbers because I had no idea.
Right, because they had let you on this show. They were looking for somebody of a certain skill level, and you weren't that, but they put you on anyway.
They put me on anyway, yeah. And the talent portion really had nothing to do with the overall score or anything. I think it was just an additional entertainment aspect to the show, I guess.
Right.
Because like there were a couple of other contestants at one point who they did kind of like a boy band kind of singing some kind of song. Someone else did, I think it was some kind of spoken word. I'm not sure exactly. Again, I'm not sure what he was saying because I didn't. I could only maybe pick out a couple of words here and there, and then of course then there was me. And the
Right.
thing is too, like way back when we were filling out these forms, and the producer guy was like, "Yeah, I want to see that." I still thought nothing would come of it, right? It was a few days later that I got the call, and yes, saying, "Yep, indeed, he wanted me to be on the show." And we had a meeting with myself and the other contestants and a few members of the production team prior to the show, like I don't know, like the week before or whatever. And the producer wanted this like kind of a little scripted kind of back and forth between me and the co-hosts to kind of segue into the dance. And so that was one thing I was very nervous about, because I was like, okay, what if I forget? What if I completely forget what I need to say? Or what if I like get the words mixed up? Because again, my language was, or my Korean was so rudimentary that I just had to memorize. And so the English translation of this little banter back and forth between me and the co-hosts was, they were supposed to say something along the lines of, "Hey, your Korean is really terrible. How did you get on the show?" And then I was supposed to say, "Oh, well, I'm good at guessing the answers." Which and so in Korean it was like I think 잘 찍었어요, which again, apparently that's hilarious, and apparently it means I'm good at guessing the answers. Everybody laughed when I said it, so I hope it was okay.
Or you're saying what they're all thinking.
you know, exactly. And then they were like, okay, so, and well, what else are you good at? And this is so cheesy. Then I was supposed to say, well, I'm good at English and dance. And then they were supposed to say, okay, can you show me, or can you show us? And then, okay. And then that was going to be the little segue to go in and like do my little thing. And yeah.
I'm listening to this story, and I'm so hung up on the idea that you applied to be on the show, they called you, and you committed to this experience with not great Korean. Like, what did you do to prepare? Did you cram? Did you study? Like, how did you, like, what steps did you take to ensure that this would be as smooth an experience as possible for you? And how'd you get over that nervousness?
Yeah, well, I was definitely nervous. I just kind of went there anyway, despite being really nervous. But yeah, the main thing I did to prepare was just trying to memorize what the producer had asked me to say for that little like scripted banter to lead up to the dance. Because that was all going to be in Korean, right? So I was going to say, like, in terms of like saying I'm good at English and dance, like, yeah, like 저는 영어 그리고 댄스 잘해요, right? So I memorized that, and I kept trying to because I was so worried that the cameras would be on me and I would freeze, and those words would just completely just disappear and I would forget.
Right.
So I just memorized that yeah, that was kind of basically it in terms of and then I also choreographed a tiny little dance. It was just it was like not even 30 seconds. It was a very, very short little dance that I choreographed with the very, very basic moves that I knew. Because again, I didn't really know very much dance either. So it was doubly ironic that they wanted me to be on the show.
Right. And it almost seems like the game kind of took back seat to the talent portion. So there wasn't much preparation involved in making sure you played the game properly, or I don't know if there was was there a winner at the end, or was?
Oh, there was. Yeah, yeah. No,
Yeah.
there definitely was. Yeah. And I think that the talent, if you were to watch the whole, because the whole show, I think it was a little over an hour. So it had quite a long running time. And it was largely the quiz portion. So that it actually did overall take a big portion of the show. But just for me, the big thing was the talent section, because that's why I got on the show. Um and I was just worried that I would trip and fall flat on my face and embarrass myself on national television, which thankfully didn't happen. But
Right.
yeah.
Now, now, were there prizes? Did you take anything home as a result of your participation?
Yeah. So in the end, I did get some gift certificates, and I think I can't remember now. It was so long ago if I got some cash prizes or not. But I mean, I came in dead last, unsurprisingly, um, at the very end. Although there was one moment in time where we did have a brief break in the filming, just for coffee and and stuff. And at that point, there was one point where I was not dead last, but that was pure coincidence because again, I was just guessing. I was just guessing at like all of my answers.
Right.
Um, they did have so yes, there was a winner. I don't recall who the winner was now at this point. But and they did have which I didn't know until the day of the filming. They did have somebody kind of standing just off camera, just close to me to kind of very quietly translate for me, but only when one of the co-hosts were speaking to me directly. So the rest of the time, I still had no idea what was going on. And I just had to kind of, if people laughed, I would laugh, and I would just kind of, try my best to make it seem like I knew what was going on when I very clearly did not.
Now, did the nervousness that might come with being in front of a live audience come into play for you at all? Or is that something that through any other means in your life you were like accustomed to?
Yeah, I mean, I was definitely nervous just in general. I don't know if the audience itself made it more nerve-wracking or not. I was just in general just very nervous. But when the lights were on us, I couldn't really see the audience as well anyway. I mean, I could hear them, of course, but um, with the lights shining on me, yeah, like I couldn't quite see the audience area as well. So I mean, maybe that helped, but I think I just I've had a tendency to just kind of throw myself into things despite being nervous, and then I'll just kind of just do things anyway. But it was definitely like once after I finished my little dance portion, so then that was okay, like pressure's off, it's done. I didn't fall flat on my face. This is great. Okay. Then I was able to like relax more. Um, so yeah, and then the rest of the day went well. I mean, it was a long day of filming. I think I want to say it was like a good 7, 8 hours, something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
How would you describe, and this is in reference to something you brought up a minute ago about being the kind of person that will just jump into an activity. How would you describe the benefit that comes from being the type of person that will say yes to so many different experiences and commit to so many different new challenges and new things?
Oh, I would say it's wonderful. I mean, I've had so many wonderful experiences in my life that I would not have if I had just kind of held myself back. And I mean, even the fact that I moved to Korea, like this was after I'd finished my undergrad and I was down to like my last $30, and I found a job and I moved halfway around the world with $30 to my name. Um, you know,
Incredible. Yeah.
uh, yeah, or like uh, there was at one point after I came back to Canada, I ended up stage managing some shows. Like an acquaintance of mine randomly asked me if I wanted to stage manage his show, doing the whole like cross Canada Fringe Theater Festival tour, and I was like, yeah, that sounds amazing. So after, and then he was emailing me back saying, oh, I guess I should ask, have you stage managed before? And I was like, no, but I could learn.
That's incredible. Yeah, that's I mean, it's a very fun way to go about life, I think. To
Yeah,
to just uh to just try new things and maybe don't question so much.
yeah, yeah. No, exactly. I mean, I think, as I get older, I'm maybe sometimes a little more reticent when it comes to that, maybe a little less likely to jump into things without thinking about it more. But yeah, certainly like experiences like this were, uh,
It,
yeah.
is that a learned quality, or is that something that comes naturally? Is there somebody in your life who was similarly open-minded and did that rub off on you?
No, I think that's just something that was just kind of innate in me. I just kind of, yeah, yeah. I think out of uh, everyone else that that I knew kind of growing up, I think I was probably uh, like I'm the only one of the only people that I know who would have like again picked up and just moved halfway across the world. With nothing more than like a plane ticket that the school sent me and $30 and
Sure.
um but I'm very glad that I've had that tendency. Yeah, definitely.
Sure. And I wasn't planning on focusing on this aspect of it for so long, but in hearing the story and noticing the commonalities in these experiences, the learning belly dancing, learning Korean, moving, like you said, and even participating in this game show, and that I'm fascinated by that quality. Let's talk just
Yeah.
for a second about you moving, like you said, with only $30 to your name. How do you summon the courage to do it? And how do you quiet the voice that tells you this might not work out? Like how do you commit to it and how do you stick to it?
Yeah. So, well, I think, well, part of it certainly helped that at the time I was in my early 20s at the time, and that's a time of life when people tend to like make decisions without necessarily thinking more deeply about the consequences. So that
Sure, a lot of
certainly
learning
helped.
lessons in your 20s. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. And then for me, like I had, I'd found a job. They sent me the airfare. And uh and I had they no one was going to meet me at the airport. I had to find my way onto the proper shuttle bus going to the proper neighborhood, and then someone was going to pick me up at this one neighborhood. And I accidentally packed the the directions and the phone number of the person who was going to be meeting me. Um, and so thankfully, I had actually I had memorized the name of the neighborhood because the neighborhood was called Noongu. And if you think won is Korean currency, and I thought no won, no won, no money. I have no money. Okay, great. So that there was like
What a
a
great
mnemonic device so I
strategy.
could.
Right.
Yeah.
I have this mnemonic device to help me remember that I'm poor.
Exactly. So it worked out great. Um, and then, and in terms of for going forward and not uh like going forward despite maybe being nervous or thinking, oh my God, is this the right decision? It's more, it kind of helped that I just kind of would make myself take the next step and then the next step, etc., until I kind of couldn't go back, as it were. So like, I packed, everything I could think of, and I had way too many bags. And basically it was really after I was on the flight and I was like over the ocean, there's no turning back, like I'm on my
Right,
way
right,
to,
right.
you know, and that's where I had some moments of like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, what have I done? This is crazy. This is why did I, and kind of freaking out.
Sure.
And then as the plane was like, descending down to Incheon airport, and, again, just kind of freaking out, uh, and then getting onto the, miraculously somehow finding the right shuttle bus. And every time the shuttle bus stopped, I would ask the driver, like, no Wongu? And every time, the driver would be like, "Ah, 노원구 아니에요." Like, no, it's not 노원구. Until finally he came to the place where, where I was supposed to get off, and he indicated that it was 노원구. Apparently there was supposed to be a hotel in that corner, and that's where someone was going to meet me, like someone from the school. So I asked the driver, like, hotel, and he kind of pointed somewhere, and I didn't see anything that resembled a hotel. And it was at night, and I was jet lagged, and all I could see was just like neon signs and like Korean something. I had no idea. Like, I just kind of had to hope that I had gotten off in the right neighborhood and stuff. So I knew the driver had to keep going. So I was like, okay, thank you. Kind of waved at him and like, took all my bags, and the bus pulled away. And so at that point, I just kind of, I think it helped that I was so tired and so jet lagged, because I think I was too tired to freak out maybe as much as I might have otherwise. So basically I just sat on one of my larger suitcases, and I just sat on this corner in northeastern Seoul, thinking, okay, well, I hope I'm where I'm supposed to be, and I hope they find me. I mean, I kind of stick out like a sore thumb here, so like it's going to be pretty obvious and I was sitting here with all my bags and stuff, and it was probably only about 10 minutes or so. It felt like forever. But eventually someone from the school actually did come over and find me, and I gave him like the biggest hug ever. I was like, "Oh my God, you found me."
Right. Unbelievable.
And yeah, so that was the start of my adventures of living in South Korea. So
I've had a similar experience in my life. When I first turned 18 years old, I wanted to be on The Price is Right, and so my parents got me the airfare, and I flew from Connecticut to Hollywood to be on the show. I got in there 3 days early because I was anticipating the line to be really long. So I sat out on the sidewalk in front of the studio for 3 days before the show. Wow. And like you, I didn't have anything I mean, I had a little bit of money, but I had, a backpack with, a change of shirt and, some basic toiletries and things. I traveled very, very light. And in my experience, as it relates to that situation, I was pleasantly surprised by the kindness of a lot of strangers during those 3 days. I know that South Korea is a different, I won't say a different world, but it's a different social climate compared to the United States. I wonder if that rings true for your situation as well, and if so, to what degree?
Yeah, no, I would say, yeah, it was, it was definitely a very welcoming environment, for sure. And, yeah, and I definitely had, like, people who would help me out. Like if I wanted to say, like, for when I went out to, eat at restaurants and I wanted to be able to communicate that I don't eat meat. One of the Korean teachers like wrote that out for me on a piece of paper, and I was able to laminate it so I could take it around with me, so I could, so there's stuff like that. Like, people were very, like everyone that I met was really kind and helpful, and actually, at the time, again, I mean, this was so long ago, I don't know what it's like now, but yeah, like sometimes I would even be just walking down the street, and just random people would would say, "Welcome to Korea,"
Wow,
like, so yeah,
that's very sweet.
Yeah. So it was super nice. And yeah, it was a fantastic experience. You know, and being there, like, the most expensive thing is getting from here to there, but once you're there, traveling around is relatively cheap. So that was also a great thing for me. Like, in my early 20s, I was able to travel all over because, in between my contracts, I would have time. And yeah, so I was able to be, I've been to China, got to go into the Great Wall. That was amazing. I've been to Japan twice, and like Vietnam, Cambodia, Thailand, Taiwan, like kind of all over, which is also like kind of amazing.
It is amazing. Yeah, what an amazing experience.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Tell me how you came about finding a video copy of your appearance on the South Korean game show. Were you able to see it when it aired or anytime after it aired, or did you have to wait a while to sort of discover a tape?
Oh, yeah. So that's a funny story. So this show, the whole premise of it was again, it was going to be a one-off show. Now, I don't know if they revived it, if they had further episodes in different years. I'm not sure, but at the time that I did it, it was the idea was that it was just going to be a one-off show, kind of to celebrate the Lunar New Year. Um, so I knew that I was going to air on KBS kind of mid-morning on the Lunar New Year. So I knew, and I thought, okay, even if I totally embarrass myself, even if I like mess up what I need to say, or if I trip and fall and totally embarrass myself, it's okay. It's gonna air like at something like 11 o'clock in the morning. No one's gonna watch it. It's fine, you know. But no. It turns out that that was like the one day where everything's shut down, everybody's at home, everybody's watching TV.
Wow. It's just a
And
maximum possible audience.
oh yeah, because afterwards I had random people that I had not told that I was going to be on this show. I had random people approach me and be like, "Oh my God, Sarah, I saw you on TV." And I was like, "Oh my God."
That's amazing. How does that kind of attention sit with you?
Yeah, it was kind of surreal. It was like it, you know, and I mean it was very short-lived feeling like a celebrity, but it was still yeah, it was very, very surreal. And it was just it definitely took me aback the first couple times people told me that, because I honestly I thought no one was going to watch it. I didn't realize that it was actually like this is like the time when everybody's watching. Everybody's at
Right,
home, everyone's watching TV.
right.
So
That's amazing.
yeah, and to give you an idea of how long ago this was, I originally got a copy of this from the KBS studios on VHS.
Wow. So did you contact them in order to get a copy of it?
I did, yes.
Oh, wonderful. And they were accommodating for that. That's great.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow,
Yeah,
wonderful.
which was fantastic. Yeah, and
So tell
so
me what
yeah.
it was like being able to watch, and I'm sorry, how long after the initial taping, I'm sorry, how long after the initial taping did you get a chance to finally see the tape?
It was maybe about a month because it was January something or other when we filmed it, and the Lunar New Year was February something. So yeah, it was about a month.
Right.
Yeah.
And tell me what it was like watching yourself. How did you critique your performance? How did you like the way you were represented on screen?
Yeah, I would say I was very relieved to see that okay, I did not make a big fool of myself. I like I was very relieved that I was like, okay, it looks okay. Like again, I didn't fall. It's and it was the dance part was very short anyway, but it was fine. And quick little banter between myself and the co-hosts that went okay. Although funnily enough, at the time, I mean, I would say my accent's better now, but at the time, because I was still so new to learning it, my accent was so bad that they subtitled me.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That is
Yeah. So
incredible. That's wow.
yeah.
Um, and
So yeah.
so how often did you show that tape to people? Was that I can imagine that this would be a great story the time you got on a game show in South Korea. How many people knew about this? How many people did you tell this story to?
Yeah, I would say I definitely yeah, I would definitely bring it up because it definitely counts way up there in terms of like most surreal experiences of my life. I'd say it comes up less often now, but certainly when it was very new to me, yeah, I would definitely bring it up, quite a bit.
Sure. And
Yeah.
and I imagine knowing somebody like Ryan who loves game shows, he was
Oh yes. Oh, he's
fascinated
the
to
first
hear
person I
about
told.
this. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's the first thing I actually I called him up. It's like you're never gonna guess what. Yeah. Yeah.
That's
No, he
incredible.
he was absolutely the first person that I called. Yeah.
So this experience of appearing on television, did it inspire you to try anything similar in the years immediately following your appearance on this show? Like, did you ever want to try out for a game show again? Did you ever get a chance to do that?
Not really, because I think because this opportunity was just so unique, and it just kind of almost fell in my lap, as it were. That no, I didn't really think about that so much. Although I think it's ironic that, so many years later, I did end up, at least for one season, working on a game show. And now I work in film and TV, like not unscripted, more I work more in like the scripted side of things, but yeah. I
Sure.
don't know if that really answers the
Oh no, it does absolutely. I'm thinking about your role on Family Feud Canada. Tell me again what your job is.
Yes, I worked it was 2 seasons ago that I worked on it. And I was part of a small team of PAs, so like production assistants, that dealt with the contestants. So myself and my fellow PAs and that team, we would meet the families in the morning, make sure they got all their paperwork signed, make sure that they kind of were up to date on all the rules and regs and that kind of thing, and make sure that they were comfortable and ready to go up on stage. And then I also, whenever any of the families were actually like in the studio, cameras running and all that, I would also be in touch with the producers, if they needed something to be kind of flown in, as it were. So if they needed, like, I don't know, top stick, which is like double-sided tape, because sometimes there might be issues with the name tags, or if there was, or with whatever they were wearing, or if they needed like powder, like if someone's face was like super shiny, I would like run that in, just things like that.
Sure,
So
sure,
that's kind of,
sure. That's wonderful. I'm
yeah.
getting to experience the excitement of a live TV show. I mean, it has to be thrilling, right?
It is, yeah. It's a lot of fun. Just the energy of the audience is great. Quite often, like sometimes I would hang out just more like outside of the studio doors, but like sometimes I would actually like stand just kind of in the wings, so I could kind of, follow along with the taping and just kind of, enjoy that energy. But yeah.
Right, right, right. In your role as somebody who made the contestants feel like they were ready to get on stage and play the game, did you employ any strategy for calming a nervous contestant? How often did you run into that situation, and what did you do to ease their anxiousness, if that was possible?
Yeah, well, it's more like if I happen to be chatting with, some family members like that were about to go up, and and if they seem nervous, I would just chat with them just in general, just to kind of, maybe try and help them get out of that headspace if they were nervous. But also in terms of that, more often than not, like my role would come into play, like if they had questions, if I have new passing by, where their little green room. The For the most part, each family of contestants would have a producer who would be with them, so they would also be there to kind of, also just kind of make, hype them up and make sure that they were ready and excited and good to go, kind of thing. But
Right. Yeah, and I just wondered if, you having your experience as unique as it was on the show that you were on, if it helps you relate to those anxieties and those fears that a first time uh, participant in TV might have.
yeah, it's funny in retrospect. Yeah, I probably should have I probably should have brought that up, because yeah, because it's funny. I didn't really ever, when I was working on the show, I never really thought about that correlation in terms of the fact that I had been on a show. Maybe because of just the length of time that had passed since then, I wasn't really thinking about that quite as much. But
Sure. And
yeah,
I'm sure because of the one-off nature of the show, you weren't thinking that you would even be talking about it or making reference to it so many years later, that there would be so many people, interested in the experience.
exactly. Yeah.
That video on YouTube, the video of the show itself has quite a. I wonder how many views it has.
Oh, I have no idea. I'd have to go back and look.
And
But
yeah, I mean, it's an interesting watch because, foreign game shows to me are so fascinating in that they're so, it's such an interesting local flavor of something that's so familiar to people living in North America. I'm always fascinated with the different ways in which different countries, adapt shows that we might be familiar with, and so to see the way they did that show and just the overall aesthetic of it was incredible. It was just perfect sort of 90s Asian TV.
I do have a funny story
Sure.
about that. There was one part that got cut out, but like so that there was this one moment when you were taping and they had asked a question, and apparently the question was very difficult. I happened to get it correctly just by pure coincidence. And one other contestant also got it right. And one of the co-hosts came up to me, and again, this was all in Korean, but because he was speaking to me directly, they did have that person who kind of whispered a translation to me.
Right.
And he was basically telling me, well, wow, like that was a really difficult question. Like how did you come up with the answer? And I remember at the time just kind of thinking, okay, what can I say that's going to be funny? It's going to be in Korean and it's going to be relevant. And I thought back to one of my students, like that I was teaching English to. Anytime this one student got a question right, he would always say, I am Chunjae. And so eventually I asked one of the Korean teachers, okay, what does Chunjae mean? And apparently, like she said, it meant genius. So I randomly knew the word for genius. So when I was on the show and the co-host asked me, okay, how did you come up with this answer? So I leaned into my microphone. I said, 나는 천재요, which means I am a genius. And
Right.
everyone laughed. It was hilarious. I can't believe they cut it. It did not make the final cut.
Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah.
What a moment. That's so wonderful.
Yeah.
It's funny. I've talked to, again, dozens of contestants that have been on so many different types of shows and from different eras. And one of the things that I find in common with every conversation I have about these experiences is that it's never not fun to talk about, whether it's somebody who's been on Jeopardy for 20 days or it's somebody who was on a one-off South Korean language-based game show. It's always a sort of fun story to remember, isn't it?
It is. It really is. Yeah. It's and to this day, like I said, it's still one of probably the most surreal experiences of my life. So it was I'm very grateful to have had that experience for sure.
Tell Us About Yourself, Conversations with Game Show Contestants, is hosted, produced, and edited by me, Christian Carrion, from my studio in beautiful downtown Lancaster City, Pennsylvania. Co-executive producer Cory Anotado. Researcher Chuck Donegan. This has been a production of BuzzerBlog, the most popular game show website in the world, in partnership with the National Archives of Game Show History at the Strong National Museum of Play in Rochester, New York. For more information, visit museumofplay.org. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Christian Carrion. Good night. Tell Us About Yourself, Conversations with Game Show Contestants is produced in partnership with the Strong National Museum of Play in Rochester, New York, one of the largest history museums in the United States, and one of the leading museums serving families with highly interactive exhibits and programs. Since 1968, the Strong Museum has been dedicated to exploring the ways in which play encourages learning, creativity, and discovery, and how it illuminates cultural history. And their National Archives of Game Show History. Founded by industry veterans Bob Bowden and Howard Blumenthal, the archive is home to thousands of artifacts representing over 80 years of broadcasting, including props, set designs, video interviews with game show professionals, and other iconic elements from the history of television at play. For more information about the National Archives of Game Show History or the Strong National Museum of Play, visit museumofplay.org or call area code 585-263-2700. Tell Us About Yourself is sponsored by bonusround.ca, streaming Canada's classic game shows on demand. Dive into the golden age of television with thousands of episodes of Canadian series that defined an era from anywhere in the world, all for just $1.99 a month. From iconic shows like Let's Make a Deal and Definition to cult classics like Bumper Stumpers and The Mad Dash, bonusround.ca brings you timeless entertainment that's fun, enlightening, and affordable. For less than the price of a cup of coffee, relive the magic of Canadian television history. Subscribe now at bonusround.ca for $1.99 and turn every night into game show night. And by The Inn at Leola Village. Nestled in the heart of picturesque Pennsylvania, the Inn at Leola Village is a sanctuary of luxury and relaxation. Indulge in the timeless beauty of their historic suites, each meticulously designed to transport you to a bygone era of elegance and grace. Experience the culinary delights of their award-winning Italian restaurant, where every dish is a masterpiece crafted from the finest local ingredients. From romantic getaways to corporate retreats, the Inn at Leola Village offers a haven for every occasion. Unwind at the spa, stroll through the lush gardens, and let the stress of everyday life melt away. Make your reservation today at theinnatleolavillage.com or call the front desk at area code 717-656-7002. The Inn at Leola Village, an oasis of luxury.